A storm raged across the ocean, waves crashing like fists against the jagged cliffs. Black Hollow Lighthouse stood tall against the fury, its beacon slicing through the dark like a watchful eye. James Kearney tightened his grip on the rusted railing, heart pounding. Below, in the foaming waters, shadows moved. They were waiting. They were always waiting. A distant voice, barely audible over the howling wind, whispered in his mind, "The light must never die." What do you think lurks beneath the waves? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the Infinite Quill for more eerie tales that linger long after the story ends. James Kearney arrived at Black Hollow Lighthouse seeking solitude. A man with a past he refused to discuss, he welcomed the isolation of the remote post. The previous keeper had vanished without a trace, leaving the lighthouse in eerie perfection. No signs of struggle, no farewell note, just a burning beacon and an unlocked door. The village at the base of the cliffs was sparse, home to weathered fishermen and weary-eyed elders. Black Hollow sat upon an island, isolated from the mainland by miles of cold, restless ocean. Supply boats came infrequently, and other than that, the lighthouse keeper's boat was the only means of coming and going. The villagers eyed James with something between pity and warning. One, an old man named Silas Boone, pulled him aside.
"Mind the light, son. The sea here ain't just water. You let the beacon die and you'll see what's waiting. We call them the drowned ones."
James dismissed it as sailor superstition. He wasn't here for ghost stories. He was here to forget. But as the days passed, unease crept into his bones. At night, he heard footsteps pacing the spiral stairs, though he was alone. The radio crackled with static before whispering voices broke through. The wind carried moans that weren't entirely human. And then there were the shapes in the water, appearing only when the beacon flickered. Something was watching and waiting. One evening, as he examined the supply room, he found an old journal hidden inside a rusted lantern case. It belonged to the last keeper. "The light must never die. The keepers before me have tried to leave. The sea takes them back. The lighthouse chooses us. We do not choose it. The ones who fight against it, who refuse to see, become lost between the tides, shadows beneath the waves. The light will not claim them." The words chilled James, but he refused to believe. Not yet. Still, the journal detailed strange occurrences, keepers speaking of voices in their dreams, of shadows slipping beneath the waves, of an unseen force compelling them to stay. Each had tried to resist. Each had failed. Then, one day during a violent storm, the power failed. The beacon died. James rushed to relight it, his lantern barely cutting through the black. As he reached the top, he saw them, twisted, half-decayed figures crawling up the cliffs, their hollow eyes locked onto him. Their mouths moved in silent pleas, but their hands were outstretched, reaching, not for him, but for the beacon above. For a fleeting moment, James thought they were trying to drag themselves from the water, but then he saw their eyes. They weren't pleading for salvation. They were warning him, urging him to relight the flame before it was too late. At first, James felt only terror, but as he stared at their wretched forms, he noticed something beyond their horror: recognition. Some of them wore remnants of lighthouse keeper uniforms, others the torn remains of old sailors' garb. They weren't just lost souls. They were former guardians. Were they all former keepers? Had the last man before him been among them? James scanned their decayed faces, searching for some hint of recognition, but the sea had eroded their identities. He shuddered at the thought. Was this what awaited him if he failed? That's when he saw something darker beneath them. A vast, slithering shape loomed in the depths, writhing with a mindless hunger. And yet, James felt it pause, just for a moment, as if sensing a weakness, as if waiting for the darkness to consume everything before it moved again. It coiled around the rocks, its form barely visible beneath the surface. The drowned ones weren't trying to break free. They were trying to keep it contained. James fumbled with the oil reserves, hands shaking. The flame flickered weakly before catching at last. Light blazed through the storm, and the figures recoiled, their forms dissipating like mist. Below, the monstrous thing in the deep sank back into darkness, retreating. James collapsed, panting. The legend was real. But the journal had left out something important. If the keepers were guarding this horror, what had happened to them? And what would happen to him? The next day, James tried to leave. He avoided the waters where he had seen the thing, steering his small boat toward the calmer, open sea. But the moment he passed the natural boundaries of the cove, the currents surged against him, dragging him back toward the cliffs. It was as if the island itself refused to let him go. At first, he fought against the tide, convinced it was just bad luck or shifting winds. But as the currents twisted unnaturally, dragging him backward, no matter how hard he rowed, the truth settled over him like a weight. The ocean had made its decision. Exhausted and defeated, he drifted back to shore. There, on the beach, Silas Boone stood waiting.
You understand now, don't you? The light needs more than fire. It needs a keeper, a willing one.
James felt the weight of the truth settle in his chest. The lighthouse was not merely a warning for ships. It was a prison for the horrors beneath, and it required more than just routine maintenance. It needed him. That night, he climbed the lighthouse steps, each footfall heavier than the last. The wind howled through the tower, but something else stirred within it now. A presence, a calling. As he reached the beacon room, he saw them waiting. His wife, his child, standing at the threshold of the beyond, smiling, waiting. His breath caught. They were just as he remembered them, untouched by time. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, and his wife, as if sensing his thoughts, spoke softly.
Death told us to wait here. Now we know why.
He had failed them in life, but here, in this place between worlds, he was being given another chance, not to leave, but to protect. Tears blurred his vision, but clarity settled in his mind. The others had fought against this fate, clinging to the world they had lost. They had feared the transformation, resisting until the sea claimed them, leaving them stranded between realms. But the lighthouse did not demand suffering. It offered purpose, a path, not a prison. Those who accepted it had not vanished. They had become the light itself, an eternal force against the darkness. For the first time in years, the ache in his chest lessened. The weight of loss, of failure, it all faded in the glow of the beacon. He was no longer a man running from his past. He was part of something greater. With newfound resolve, he stepped forward, past the veil of the living world. The lighthouse remained, the beacon shining eternally, its guardian in place. And below, in the depths, the drowned ones stood in solemn vigil, no longer pleading, but watching, protecting. James Kearney had found his purpose. The light would never die. What did you think of this eerie tale? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the Infinite Quill for more haunting stories that linger in your mind long after the last word fades.